The air was thick with anticipation. The village was alive with preparations for the wedding of Amina and Jabari. The villagers gathered, murmuring quietly among themselves. Amina stood by the door of her family's hut, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the simple gown her mother had sewn for her. She didn't want to do this, but there was no choice. Her family's future depended on this union. Her mother had explained it all. This marriage was their only hope. Amina had dreamed of something more, of a life beyond the poverty that gripped them. But today, the weight of tradition pressed down on her like a heavy stone. Her parents had arranged this match, and the decision was final. Jabari, the farmer from the next village, was the man chosen for her. He seemed kind, though she had always felt something was missing. His simple clothes were like every other man's in the village, but today, something about him felt different. "Why are we doing this?" Amina asked her mother quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It feels wrong. Is this really the only way?" Her mother looked at her with eyes filled with the sadness of generations past. "It's for the family's sake, Amina. We have no other choice. You'll see, this is how things must be. Your duty is to the family." Amina's heart sank. She had no choice but to comply. The ceremony was about to begin. Amina looked at her soon-to-be husband, standing at the front with the elders. Jabari was no different from the other men in the village. Tall, strong, and hard-working. His face was kind, but there was something about him that did not sit right with Amina. Despite his simple attire, he carried himself with an air of quiet confidence, a calm that didn't fit the poverty she thought he came from. "He looks like every other man here," Amina thought, "but there's something strange about him." Her eyes followed him as he glanced toward her, and for a moment their eyes locked. His gaze was intense, but there was no arrogance, only a deep, quiet certainty. "Let's focus on today," he said softly, his voice barely audible. "The life I lead is not what you expect." Amina couldn't shake the feeling that Jabari was hiding something far bigger than his appearance let on. Why did he feel so distant? Why was he so silent? Why hadn't he shared more about himself with her? Before she could ask any more questions, an unexpected figure entered the gathering. The crowd parted to reveal a man Amina did not recognize. He wore fine clothes that stood in stark contrast to the village's worn-out garments. His presence sent a ripple through the crowd, whispers passing between the villagers. This man was Musa, an old friend of Jabari's from the city. The two exchanged a brief, whispered conversation before Musa turned to leave, giving Amina one last glance. It was brief, but it left her unsettled. Musa's words to Jabari lingered in the air like smoke. "Is she ready to know the truth?" Musa asked in a hushed tone. "The time may be closer than you think." Jabari, ever calm, answered with a slow nod. "Not yet. She will see soon enough." Amina's mind raced. What was this all about? Who was Jabari really? The questions swirled in her head like a storm. He had been silent about his past, but now there was talk of secrets, of truths yet to be revealed. What was going on? She leaned toward her sister, unable to keep the suspicion from her voice. "Does he seem different to you?" she whispered. "It's like he's hiding something." Her sister, trying to reassure her, smiled gently. "Maybe it's just nerves, Amina. You should trust him." Amina didn't answer. She couldn't stop her heart from racing. There was something about Jabari's presence, something that didn't fit with the life she had imagined for herself. Amina watched him carefully, noting his quiet demeanor as the ceremony continued. As the vows were about to be exchanged, Amina stole another glance at Jabari. His face was serious now, his usual calm replaced with an expression of deep thought. Her mind kept turning over what Musa had said, what Jabari had whispered. She couldn't understand what he was keeping from her, but she could feel the weight of it pressing down on her. Who is he really? Amina thought. Why won't he share his past with me? Just before the vows, Jabari turned toward her, his gaze holding hers. There was a softness to his words, as if he had known this moment would come. "Sometimes, the truth is harder to share than a lie," he said quietly. "But you will learn soon enough." Amina's heart raced. What was he hiding? The ceremony had begun, but the questions burned hotter than ever. Jabari was not just the farmer he had led her to believe. There was something much larger, much more powerful at play. As the wedding ceremony continued, the exchange between Jabari and Musa lingered in Amina's mind. She didn't understand it all yet, but she knew one thing for certain. Her new life with Jabari was not what she had imagined. The truth would come, and when it did, it would change everything. Every morning, Amina woke up before the sun, the cold earth beneath her feet grounding her in the reality of her life. The village was poor, and the world outside was a harsh reminder that survival was never guaranteed. The land offered little, and the days felt long. Amina worked harder than anyone she knew, tending to her family's small garden, gathering firewood, and doing everything she could to help make ends meet. Yet, no matter how much effort she poured into it, the struggle never seemed to end. As she carried water from the river, her thoughts drifted to a future she could only dream of. Every day, I work harder than the last. Her hands were rough from the labor, her back sore, but the weight of the village's poverty pressed even heavier on her heart. But will it ever be enough for us to escape this life? Amina often wondered if there was a way out, a way to break free from the cycle of hardship. But hope seemed as distant as the mountains in the horizon. At home, her family gathered in the small hut, the fire crackling in the corner as her mother spoke with a grave tone. "Amina," her mother said softly, "you must do this for the family. Jabari is our only chance. We need you to be strong." The words were sharp, cutting through the quiet of the room. Her mother's face was lined with worry. Her father sat beside her, his hands clasped together. Amina could feel the pressure, the weight of their expectations heavy on her shoulders. "I don't know if I'm ready," Amina whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. She looked down at her hands, worn from the endless work. How could she be ready for this? To marry a man she barely knew, forced into a life she hadn't chosen. But the truth was clear. There was no other choice. Her family needed this marriage. They needed Jabari. The days that followed were a blur of preparations. Amina's mind often wandered as she worked, her hands moving through tasks she had done 1,000 times before. Is this the life I'm supposed to live? The question gnawed at her. It feels like I'm trapped with no way out. She longed for more than just survival, more than just fulfilling the role assigned to her by birth. She wanted love, respect, a life where she could stand as more than a tool to lift her family's fortunes. But in her heart, she knew the truth. The tradition of her village bound her, and no amount of wishing could change that. This is my life. This is what I must do. Meanwhile, Jabari, the man she was set to marry, kept a quiet distance. He was a farmer, like many in the village, but there was something about him that never quite fit. He moved with a calm that made him seem different from the others, perhaps even distant. What Amina didn't know was that Jabari was hiding something far more significant than his calm demeanor. He had lived in the village for years, working alongside the other farmers, his true identity concealed. He was not just a simple farmer, he was a billionaire, his wealth carefully hidden beneath the humble clothing he wore. He had chosen to live in this village not because he had to, but because he was searching for something deeper, something real. He was tired of being seen as just a man with money. He longed to find someone who would see him for who he truly was, not for the fortune he had built. Jabari had watched Amina from a distance, seeing her strength and beauty, but also the burden she carried. He knew her family was struggling, and his heart went out to her. He had decided to marry her, not out of obligation alone, but because he saw something in her. Amina, unlike others, seemed to have a heart that wasn't focused on wealth, and he hoped she might be the one to value him for who he was. Yet despite his growing feelings for her, Jabari struggled with a deep internal conflict. He had built his life on this secret, and revealing it now might shatter everything he had worked for. She needs to know the truth, but not yet, Jabari thought as he stood by the fields, watching Amina work from a distance. The truth was a heavy burden he wasn't sure he was ready to share. How much longer will you keep hiding? Musa, his old friend from the city, had asked him the other day, his voice filled with concern. "She deserves the truth, my friend." Jabari didn't respond. He only glanced at the village in the distance, where Amina was walking with her family. He wanted to tell her, to open his heart and reveal who he really was, but he couldn't. Not yet. The risk of losing her, of her seeing him as just another rich man, was too great. He needed to know that her feelings for him were real, not based on the promise of wealth. And so, with each passing day, Jabari kept his secret, even as he became more certain that Amina was the one he wanted. He wrestled with his guilt, knowing that every moment he spent in silence was a moment of deceit. But the choice was not easy. As the days passed, Amina's doubt only grew. She couldn't shake the feeling that Jabari was hiding something. His calm nature, his silence, his distance, there was something about him that didn't quite fit with the man she had imagined. She wondered if Jabari's quiet demeanor was because of their impending marriage, or if it was something deeper. "Are you sure he's the one for me?" Amina asked herself quietly one evening, sitting alone by the fire. "All I see is a man struggling like everyone else here." Jabari, unaware of her inner turmoil, thought to himself, "I need to tell her the truth, but it's not the right time." The truth remained hidden, just beneath the surface, waiting to burst forth. But for now, Amina and Jabari remained two people, each carrying their own burdens, each unaware of the deep secret the other held. Their lives were about to change, but neither knew how much. The days after Amina and Jabari's wedding settled into a routine, but there was a simmering tension between them. Amina worked tirelessly to support her family, and her days were filled with the same physical labor she had known her entire life. But something was different now. Jabari, her new husband, was distant, always lost in his thoughts or busy with his farm. He never shared much about his life before the village, and Amina couldn't help but wonder why. Why does he avoid talking about his past? Why does he never mention anything about his life outside the farm? Amina thought to herself as she worked alongside him in silence, the weight of his quietness pressing on her. His aloofness puzzled her, and with each passing day, her doubts about him grew. She had married him, thinking they would build a life together, yet he remained a stranger in many ways. One afternoon, while cleaning their small house, Amina noticed something strange. A fine leather pouch, something clearly not belonging to a farmer, was tucked away in a drawer. She picked it up, running her fingers over the smooth material. It didn't feel like the kind of thing Jabari would own. She felt her pulse quicken as suspicion began to gnaw at her. Where did this come from? This isn't something a farmer would own. Amina's mind raced. She had noticed other oddities too. Jabari's house, for example, was far too neat and well kept for someone who lived a life of hard, rural labor. His clothes, though simple, were always in perfect condition. Everything about him seemed a little too polished, a little too perfect. She couldn't keep it to herself anymore. Later that day, while speaking to her sister, she brought it up cautiously. "Do you think there's more to Jabari than what he lets on? I'm starting to feel like he's not being honest with me," Amina said, trying to keep her voice steady. Her sister raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Amina hesitated. "I don't know. It just feels like he's hiding something. He's too quiet. I'm not sure if I really know him." The village, as always, buzzed with gossip. The newlyweds were the talk of the town. Some villagers were curious about why Jabari kept such a low profile, while others questioned Amina's choice in a man who seemed so different from everyone else. The pressure on Amina grew, and her family's demands weighed heavily on her. "You must do more, Amina. Jabari isn't the solution we hoped for. You need to take control," her mother said, her voice tinged with frustration. Amina, overwhelmed, snapped back. "I'm doing my best, but no one understands what it's like living with so many secrets." The frustration in her voice only deepened the rift between her and Jabari. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was keeping her at arm's length, not letting her in, and he, too, was grappling with a secret that was eating him up inside. Jabari, though outwardly calm, wrestled with his own turmoil. He had married Amina with the hope that their love would be genuine, that she would love him for who he truly was, not for his wealth. He had built a life of deception, and the guilt of not being honest with her began to erode his sense of self. Every time he looked at her, he saw the woman he loved, but the fear that she might only love him for his money haunted him. "She deserves to know, but can she love me for who I am? Or will my fortune blind her to everything else?" Jabari thought as he stared out at the horizon one evening, his heart heavy with the weight of his secret. Then one evening, Amina's worst fears were confirmed. While cleaning, she stumbled across a letter hidden in a drawer. The letter, addressed to Jabari from his old friend Musa. shattered everything she thought she knew about him. "Jabari, you're a billionaire?" Amina whispered, her hands trembling as she read the letter aloud. The revelation struck her like a bolt of lightning. All this time, he's been hiding this from me. Why didn't he tell me the truth? Her world spun as she processed the information. All the pieces she couldn't fit together suddenly clicked into place. The fine pouch, his mysterious past, the careful way he spent money, it all made sense now. But it also broke her heart. She felt deceived, betrayed. That night, Amina confronted Jabari, her anger boiling over. "How dare you lie to me? You've been deceiving me this entire time. All this time, I've worked so hard, thinking we were the same. And you're hiding a fortune." Amina shouted, her voice trembling with fury. Jabari stood motionless, regret etched on his face. "It wasn't the right time to tell you, Amina. I wanted to see if you would love me for me, not for what I own." His voice was calm, but there was a note of pain in it that Amina couldn't ignore. "I gave everything to this marriage. I believed in you, and you lied to me," Amina cried, tears welling in her eyes. The betrayal was too much for her to bear. Jabari sighed deeply, his voice filled with regret. "I never meant to hurt you, Amina. I wanted you to choose me for who I am, not for what I can give. I didn't want to lose what we had before it even began." Amina, still reeling from the shock, could barely comprehend his words. "But you should have trusted me. How could I love you if you never gave me the chance?" she whispered, the hurt in her voice undeniable. Jabari's heart sank as he realized the depth of his mistake. He had built his life on lies, hoping for a chance at genuine love, but now he feared it was too late. "I can't change what I've done, but I can promise you this. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for it, if you'll let me." Amina took a step back, her heart torn between the love she still felt for Jabari and the overwhelming sense of betrayal. "I don't know if I can trust you again, Jabari. You've hurt me too much." As she stood there, her mind racing with conflicting emotions, she realized she needed time. Time to process everything. Time to decide whether forgiveness was even possible. "I need time. I need to think about all of this," she said quietly, her voice breaking. Jabari, seeing the hurt in her eyes, silently nodded. He knew he had a long road ahead if he ever hoped to earn her trust again. But for now, all he could do was wait and hope that she would one day forgive him. The tension that had been building between Amina and Jabari finally reached a breaking point. One evening, after days of silence and growing unease, Amina could no longer hold back. Her emotions overflowed, and she stormed out of their home, her heart heavy with betrayal and hurt. "How could you lie to me like this? All this time, you've been playing me for a fool," she screamed as she fled into the night, leaving Jabari standing in the doorway, frozen in regret. His voice, full of pain, called after her. "Amina, please. I never wanted to hurt you." But she was already gone, her footsteps echoing through the quiet village streets. Amina wandered through the village in a daze, her heart torn between the love she still felt for Jabari and the sense of betrayal that now consumed her. The villagers noticed her distress, some offering sympathy, others whispering about her and Jabari. "Why do I still care for him? He's hurt me, but I can't just forget everything we shared," Amina thought, walking aimlessly, her mind racing. A villager, seeing Amina's conflict, approached her and offered some simple advice. "Sometimes the heart doesn't listen to what the mind says. You need to decide what's worth holding on to." Amina's mind wandered back to Jabari, the man she had married with hope and love, but his secrets had shaken her to her core. How could she trust him again? Was love enough to overcome the lies? Meanwhile, back at the farm, Jabari was facing pressure from his family. They had no idea what had transpired between him and Amina, but they were relentless in their demands. His father, angry and disappointed, stormed into the house. "You've spent too long hiding away. It's time for you to step up and take control of what's yours," he shouted, his voice filled with frustration. Jabari stood his ground, his mind still reeling from his argument with Amina. "I won't do it. I've chosen my own path, and it doesn't involve the family business," he replied firmly, his voice unwavering. But as his father left in a huff, Jabari felt the weight of his decision. He didn't want to live according to his family's expectations. He wanted to live for himself on his own terms. However, the constant pressure was wearing him down. In the midst of this, a new threat arose. Amina's family, already struggling, became the target of a corrupt businessman who sought to exploit their vulnerability. The businessman demanded a large sum of money, using threats and intimidation to force Amina's father into submission. "You will pay what you owe, or I'll make sure your daughter suffers," the businessman threatened coldly, his voice full of menace. Amina, desperate to protect her family, found herself caught in a dangerous situation. She had no money to offer, and the businessman's threats were growing more severe. "Please, we don't have the money. We're just poor villagers," Amina pleaded, trembling with fear. In that moment, Jabari learned of Amina's predicament. The guilt of his previous actions still weighed heavily on him, but now he was faced with a new decision, one that could change everything. Despite his earlier reluctance to reveal his wealth, he couldn't stand by and watch Amina and her family suffer. "I can't let her go through this alone. If this is what it takes to protect her, then so be it," Jabari thought, determination flooding his heart. He knew he had to step forward, reveal his true identity, and take control of the situation. With resolve, he turned to his family. "I'll never be the man you want me to be, but I am the man Amina needs right now," Jabari said firmly, his voice carrying the weight of his decision. With that, Jabari made his move. He confronted the corrupt businessman, using the full power of his hidden fortune to put an end to the threats against Amina's family. He arrived in style, his wealth on full display, a stark contrast to the humble farmer everyone believed him to be. The businessman, stunned by the sudden appearance of someone with so much power, faltered, realizing he had underestimated the situation. "I've heard enough of your threats. You will leave this family alone, or I'll make sure you regret ever crossing me," Jabari said with authority, his voice like steel. Amina, standing at a distance, watched in shock as Jabari revealed his true identity. The man she had married, the one she had trusted, was not the humble farmer she had believed him to be. He was someone else entirely, someone powerful, someone capable of changing the fate of her family in an instant. What is happening? Is this really Jabari?" Amina whispered to herself, her mind struggling to process the truth. As Jabari used his wealth to secure Amina's family's safety, she couldn't help but feel a whirlwind of emotions. Shock, relief, and betrayal all crashed over her at once. The man she had married was no longer just her husband. He was a stranger, a figure from another world. She walked toward him, her voice trembling as she asked, You're the one behind all of this?" Jabari, his face softening with sincerity, met her eyes. "I didn't want you to love me for what I have. I wanted you to love me for who I am," he said quietly. The revelation stunned the entire village. Word spread like wildfire that Jabari, the once humble farmer, was actually a billionaire. The villagers, many of whom had once looked down on him, now saw him in an entirely different light. Some were envious, others amazed, but many were left with more questions than answers. "Did you hear? Jabari is rich. All this time, he was hiding his wealth." One villager whispered to another, "This changes everything. But what does it mean for Amina?" Another murmured, the village abuzz with gossip. In the aftermath, Amina and Jabari had a heart-to-heart conversation. Amina, her voice breaking, expressed the deep hurt she still felt. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? We could have done so much together," she said tearfully, her pain raw and unfiltered. Jabari, regretful, responded softly, "I wanted you to choose me, not my money. But I see now I should have trusted you with the truth." The path forward was uncertain for them both, but the confrontation marked a turning point in their relationship. Jabari had revealed his true self, and now it was up to Amina to decide what was worth holding on to. The future of their love and their marriage rested in her hands. The revelation of Jabari's wealth sent shockwaves through the village, and the consequences of his secret were felt deeply by everyone, especially Amina. The villagers were divided. Some marveled at his hidden fortune, while others felt betrayed or envious. Gossip spread quickly, and rumors about Amina and Jabari's marriage began to circulate. Amina overheard whispers from villagers as she passed through the streets. "All this time, he was a billionaire, and we never knew." One villager murmured, "But did he marry her for love or just to play a game?" Another questioned, voice tinged with suspicion. Amina, walking away from their whispers, felt a deep ache in her chest. What do they really know about us? She thought bitterly, wondering if the villagers' judgment could tear apart the bond she had with Jabari. Despite her gratitude for Jabari's help in protecting her family, Amina found herself deeply conflicted. The trust she had in him was shattered by the secret he kept. She couldn't understand why he had hidden his wealth from her, and she wrestled with the idea of moving forward with him after everything that had come to light. I'm grateful, but how could he keep this from me? How can I trust him again? She thought, her heart torn between love and hurt. Yet, a small voice in her heart whispered, but he did save us. He risked everything. Can I forgive him? Jabari, knowing he needed to explain himself, sat down with Amina, his expression earnest. He shared the painful truth of his actions. I never wanted you to see me as anything other than the man you married. I wanted to know if you loved me for who I am, not for my wealth. His voice was soft, filled with regret. Amina, her voice barely above a whisper, responded with the pain that had festered inside her. But you should have trusted me. You should have known I loved you, even without all of this. Jabari nodded, the weight of his actions sinking in. I was wrong. I let fear get in the way. As they spoke, Amina began to see Jabari in a new light. His intentions, though flawed, were born out of a deep desire for their love to be real, untainted by wealth. Slowly, her anger began to soften, and she understood the complexity of the man she had married. Despite the hurt, part of her still loved him, and the bond they shared was too strong to break over his secret. I see now why you did it, but it still hurts, Amina murmured, her voice trembling. I can't change the past, but I promise to be honest with you from now on. Let's start fresh, Jabari replied gently, his sincerity reaching her heart. I want to believe you, Amina whispered, her voice laced with both hope and doubt. The couple, acknowledging their mistakes, decided to rebuild their relationship from the ground up. They agreed to start anew, with honesty, transparency, and trust at the foundation. The hurt was still there, but it no longer defined them. They were ready to face the future together, unafraid of what it might bring. I'm sorry for doubting you. I should have trusted you more, Amina said, her voice full of sincerity as she looked at Jabari. We both made mistakes, but now we can build something real together. Jabari responded, taking her hand in his eyes full of conviction. Jabari's family, initially upset and shocked by his secret, slowly began to understand Amina's place in his life. They saw the love and respect she had for him and how she had supported him despite everything. His mother, once wary of Amina, finally accepted her with a warm smile. You've made my son happy. That's all that matters to us, Jabari's mother said, her voice kind and understanding. Amina, nervous yet grateful, smiled back. I'm just grateful for the chance to be part of your family. With their relationship healing, Amina and Jabari turned their focus to the future. Now that his wealth was no longer a secret, they decided to use it for good. Together, they worked to improve the village, investing in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. They created job opportunities, lifted the community out of poverty, and gave back to those who had supported them. Amina played an active role, helping to create programs that empowered the villagers, showing them that no matter their circumstances, they could rise. We have everything we need to make this village thrive. Let's build something lasting together, Amina said, her voice filled with passion as she addressed the villagers. This is just the beginning. We will create a future for everyone, not just for us, Jabari added, proud of the woman Amina had become. The couple's actions inspired the village, and they worked tirelessly to improve the lives of everyone around them. Their bond, now built on trust, love, and shared goals, became an example for others to follow. As the sun set on the horizon, Amina and Jabari stood side by side, hand in hand. Their journey had not been easy, but they had come out of it stronger, more united than ever. They understood now that love was not just about grand gestures, but about commitment, honesty, and mutual support. We've come a long way, haven't we? Amina said, her smile bright and full of hope. Yes, and I wouldn't have it any other way, Jabari replied, his grin as wide as hers, ready for whatever the future held. Together, they were ready to face whatever challenges came their way, knowing they could build a future built on love, trust, and the promise of something lasting. As the story comes to a close, Amina finds herself reflecting on everything that has transpired. Her journey, filled with moments of confusion, anger, and heartbreak, now feels like a lesson in what truly matters. She had once been consumed by the idea of Jabari's wealth, questioning his motives and feeling betrayed by his secrecy. But as the dust settled, Amina realized that her initial frustrations had been born from misunderstanding. She now saw that the most valuable things in life weren't material possessions. They were love, trust, and the bond shared with others. I've learned that wealth isn't what truly defines us. It's the love and trust we share that makes us rich, Amina thought as she looked at Jabari, her heart lightened by her newfound understanding. I can stand tall, no matter where I come from, she added to herself, a deep sense of self-worth blossoming within her. She had learned that her value didn't depend on the circumstances of her life, but on the strength of her character and the relationships she built. Jabari, too, had come to terms with the mistakes he had made. He reflected on his actions, the deception that had caused so much pain, and how his decision to hide his wealth had nearly destroyed everything he held dear. He realized that, in his quest for self-protection, he had unknowingly pushed the person he loved the most away. Through his journey with Amina, Jabari learned that honesty and vulnerability were the foundations of any true relationship. He understood that while wealth can be lost, trust, once built on sincerity, is invaluable. I hid my wealth to protect myself, but in the end, I only hurt the one person I cared about. True wealth is found in trust, Jabari reflected, deep in thought. When he finally spoke to Amina, his words were filled with the wisdom he had gained. I thought wealth could make me happy, but now I see it's love and loyalty that bring real joy. The consequences of Jabari's deception were not just felt by Amina, but by the entire village. His secret had sowed seeds of doubt and mistrust in the community. The villagers, too, had been impacted by the falsehoods he kept hidden. This realization served as a painful reminder that deception, no matter how well-intentioned, always carries a cost. The pain Amina had felt was a direct result of Jabari's dishonesty. The breach of trust had nearly torn them apart. The pain I felt, it was because you weren't honest with me, Amina quietly admitted, her voice a mix of sorrow and understanding. I wanted to protect you, but I see now that I only pushed you away. Jabari responded sadly, the weight of his actions heavy on his shoulders. As the story unfolded, both Amina and Jabari came to see that true wealth is not measured by gold or material possessions, but by the relationships we build. The richest treasure is found in the love and trust we give and receive. Their journey, filled with mistakes and healing, highlighted the importance of integrity, loyalty, and mutual respect in building a lasting partnership. Wealth that lasts isn't found in gold, but in the love and trust we build with each other, Amina said, her voice strong and clear as she addressed the villagers who had watched her transformation. We've learned that together. Let us all treasure what truly matters, Jabari added, nodding in agreement, his words echoing the lesson that had shaped their journey. With their hearts united, Amina and Jabari knew that their new beginning was not just about financial success, but about building a life rooted in trust, honesty, and shared values. They had learned that love, when nurtured by sincerity and understanding, was the foundation of any lasting partnership. Together, we can build a future based on trust, not wealth, Amina said, looking at Jabari with a smile that reflected her deep commitment to the future they would create. And that's worth more than anything else, Jabari replied, holding her hand, his eyes filled with a quiet confidence that came from the understanding they had built together. Their story, filled with conflict and resolution, had ultimately led them to the realization that the greatest wealth in life is found not in material things, but in the bonds we share with others. Amina and Jabari's journey, shaped by their mistakes and growth, offered a universal lesson that true happiness and fulfillment come from the love, trust, and loyalty we cultivate with those who matter most.